According to an interview with RAF pilot Bud Abbott, it was, quote, a flying abortion. The Fairy Barracuda was freakishly constructed, with high wings, a T-tail, and L-shaped landing gear. It was underpowered and impossible to see out of. Yet here it was, about to take on the mightiest ship that still remained of the German Navy. Deep in the protective embrace of the Norwegian fjords, towering cliffs and thick pine forests hid the German Battleship Tirpitz, now deemed the lonely queen of the north by some and the iron whore by others. As the Allies closed in on victory in the spring of 1944, Tirpitz was still one of the biggest threats in the German Navy. Although she was stuck sulking in the Arctic, her mere presence continued to prove a distraction for Allied shipping, to the point that the British decided they had finally had enough. On the morning of April 3, 1944, the stillness of Tirpitz's hiding place in the fjord was interrupted by the shattering roar of approaching engines. Before the ship could fully deploy the smokescreen generators, 40 Fairy Barracudas approached, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engines dragging them through the air. The Barracudas carried a potentially devastating mix of 1,600 and 500-pound bombs. Fully loaded, they were fat, heavy, and slow, barely able to take off from their carriers. Now they were being asked to waddle in and finish the job that proper and more illustrious bombers, such as the Halifax and Lancaster, had failed to do before. Just as the daring Fairy Barracudas took on the mighty Tirpitz, you too can prove your mettle in high-octane aerial combat in Wings of Heroes, a free-to-play mobile game that puts you in the cockpit of World War II's most iconic warplanes. Wings of Heroes isn't just another arcade flying game. Choose from a vast array of meticulously recreated World War II aircraft, each with its own unique handling and capabilities. With realistic flight controls and physics, you'll feel like you're really there as you engage in intense 5v5 dogfights and bombing runs that will test your skills as both pilot and strategist. Flying solo won't win the war. Like the great air battles of history, in Wings of Heroes, teamwork is key. Coordinate with your squad, upgrade your aircraft, and devise tactics to outmaneuver your opponents across multiple game modes, from the fast-paced action of dogfight to the strategic depth of domination. Every battle is a chance to prove your worth as an ace pilot. For the ultimate test of skill, you can even try Ace Mode, where auto-aim is disabled, and only the best pilots survive. Best of all, Wings of Heroes keeps the action fresh with monthly updates, new planes, and daily challenges, all in a package that won't eat up your phone's storage. Download Wings of Heroes for free using the link in the description or scanning the QR code. What's more, you can use our code, Dark Skies, to get a unique skin for a starter plane. Prepare to join the legends of aerial combat with Wings of Heroes today. By the late 1930s, the Fairy Swordfish was known as one of the Royal Navy's most reliable workhorses. Known for its ruggedness and dependability, this biplane had become central to the fleet air arms operations. But despite its charm, the design was rapidly becoming outdated in the face of advancing technology. Looking to find a replacement, the Swordfish creators, Fairy Aviation, began work on the Albacore model. But while it was indeed more advanced, with an enclosed cockpit and increased speed, it still fell short of being the required significant leap forward. To war planners, it was clear that an aircraft capable of both torpedo bombing and dive bombing was more urgent than ever. As such, even before its introduction to service, the Air Ministry issued specification S-2437 in 1937, seeking a monoplane with folding wings for easier storage aboard aircraft carriers. It would need to carry a torpedo or a 2,000-pound bomb load and feature defensive armament, including a rear gunner, to protect against enemy fighters. Development on the project, the Fairy Barracuda, initially progressed smoothly, with the new Rolls-Royce X engine, specifically designed as a high-power engine for naval aircraft, expected to give the model the performance edge it needed in both torpedo and dive bombing roles. However, the X engine project ran into significant issues during its development, with Rolls-Royce already stretched thin and focusing its resources on the Merlin and Griffin engines, both being prioritized for fighter aircraft like the Spitfire and Hurricane. As tensions in Europe continued to rise, the motor program was abruptly cancelled in 1939, leaving the Barracuda design without its intended power plant. The Fairy engineering and design team was forced to scramble for a replacement, eventually settling on the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which was already proven in fighter applications. However, the Merlin was significantly different from the X, both in weight and configuration, requiring substantial redesigns to the Barracuda's airframe and internal systems. This reworking of the design set the critical program back by several months. By the time the Fairy Barracuda flew for the first time on December 7, 1940, Britain was fully immersed in war once again. Despite the promising design, the Barracuda underperformed from the start. The model's weight, combined with the new engine installation, caused quite serious issues of stability and maneuverability. The Merlin 30 engine, while dependable, struggled to provide enough power for the Barracuda's heavy frame, raising concerns about its suitability for combat. Consequently, the initial 30 production models, the Barracuda Mark I, were relegated to training and evaluation, serving as a foundation for the Mark II model. It would be the Barracuda Mark II that became the most widely produced version of the aircraft. This carrier-borne torpedo and dive bomber, designed by Fairy Aviation, held the distinction of being the first aircraft of its type in the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm to be fabricated entirely from metal. This robust shoulder-wing cantilever monoplane stood 15 feet tall and had a maximum takeoff weight of around 14,200 pounds. The engine selected for this model was the Rolls-Royce Merlin 32 engine, producing 1640 horsepower. The Mark II model could achieve a top speed of 228 miles per hour, with a range of 656 miles and a service ceiling of 16,600 feet. Despite these improvements, many aviation experts felt the Merlin 32 still didn't provide the Barracuda with enough power, and it was widely believed that a 2,000 horsepower engine was needed to unlock the aircraft's full potential. With the challenges of carrier operations in mind, the Barracuda featured a hydraulically actuated retractable undercarriage. Its non-retracting tailwheel provided added stability during landings, while a flush arrestor hook mounted ahead of the tailwheel assisted with carrier landings. Additionally, the Mark I flight tests revealed the need for greater stability, leading to the introduction of an unusual T-tail arrangement on the second prototype. One of the Barracuda's most standout innovations was the inclusion of Fairy Youngman flaps. These large, hydraulically controlled surfaces acted as both dive brakes and landing aids, allowing the aircraft to maintain stability during steep dive bombing attacks. The Barracuda's wings were conventional in their structure, but featured folding mechanisms at the wing roots, allowing them to be neatly tucked away when stored aboard aircraft carriers. Inside, the Barracuda was designed to accommodate a three-man crew. The pilot was seated at the front, while the navigator, who doubled as a bomber and rear gunner, sat in tandem positions behind. As for armament against the Axis powers, the Barracuda was equipped with two 303-inch machine guns for defense, as well as a wide variety of offensive payloads, including 1,500-pound bombs, depth charges, or torpedoes, giving it versatility in both anti-shipping and anti-submarine roles. Due to all the engine and design challenges, the Mark II variant did not enter service until January 1943. By then, much of the conflict's decisive battles had already passed, and the Barracuda found itself arriving at a time when the war's momentum had begun to shift in favor of the Allies. The Fairy Barracuda finally and officially entered service on January 10, 1943, with 827th Squadron of the Fleet Air Arm under the command of Lieutenant Commander Roy Sidney Baker Faulkner, a former Admiralty test pilot. From then on, the all-metal model became the FAA's operational workhorse. Initially deployed in the North Atlantic, the 827th Squadron focused on anti-submarine and reconnaissance missions during the critical early months of service. While designed as a torpedo bomber, operators quickly discovered the Barracuda's true strength lay in its versatility. With much of the Axis-aligned shipping already destroyed by 1943, the aircraft found itself frequently used as a dive bomber against smaller naval vessels and ground targets. Throughout 1943, more Barracuda squadrons were formed. That summer, the 810th Squadron aboard HMS Illustrious launched the aircraft into its first major combat action off the coast of Norway. Shortly after, the squadron was deployed to the Mediterranean theater to deliver critical support during the Allied landings at Salerno, an essential phase of the invasion of Italy. As the first operational year of this model neared its end, the Royal Navy had equipped 24 frontline squadrons with the Barracuda, solidifying its place as a key asset in the fleet air arm. But it was in its next mission that the Barracuda would truly make its mark, called upon to hunt one of the war's most elusive and dangerous targets. By the spring of 1944, despite the Allies already having changed the tide of the war, the Kriegsmarine ship Tirpitz remained one of the most powerful threats still lurking in the Arctic waters. For years now, the lonely Queen of the North had terrorized Allied convoys, crippling supply routes to the Soviet Union, forcing them to reroute, wasting valuable time and resources. Yet, despite being heavily targeted by the Royal Navy and the RAF, Tirpitz had evaded destruction thanks to the protective fjords of Norway, its heavily reinforced armor, and the elaborate smokescreens that shrouded it during air raids. This huntress's survival meant it could still pose a devastating threat, keeping significant Allied naval assets tied down to monitor its every move. In 1944, the Royal Navy launched multiple strikes against the battleship, with the Barracuda taking center stage in these ambitious efforts to neutralize the fearsome German vessel in a series of daring operations. The first major strike against the Tirpitz came during Operation Tungsten on April 3, 1944. That morning, 40 Fairy Barracudas, led by strike leader Roy Sidney Baker Faulkner and supported by an escort of Corsairs and Wildcats, launched from the decks of HMS Victorious and HMS Furious in the icy waters of the Norwegian Sea. According to intelligence, Tirpitz was anchored in Kafjord, heavily fortified and surrounded by anti-aircraft defenses. As the Barracudas flew in low under the radar, the roar of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engines cut through the still Arctic air. At a coordinated signal, they dove in steep angles, their Fairy Youngman flaps deployed to stabilize the descent as they unleashed a torrent of 1,600-pound armor-piercing bombs on the battleship below. The first wave of Barracudas scored multiple direct hits on Tirpitz, penetrating its thick armor and causing serious damage to the superstructure. Fires broke out on board as secondary explosions rocked the German battleship. Despite the heavy flak that filled the sky, the Barracuda squadrons pressed on, and their bombs continued to punch deep into the hull of the ship. By the end of the operation, after 14 direct hits and the loss of only one Barracuda, Tirpitz was severely damaged, incapacitated for months, and forced to remain anchored for extensive repairs. This blow caused the Axis to pause the service of one of its most important assets as the Normandy invasion approached. 3 months later, the Barracudas returned to finish the job with Operation Mascot. On July 17, 1944, 44 Barracudas once again took to the skies, launched from HMS Formidable, HMS Indefatigable, and HMS Furious. This time, the Germans were prepared to meet their fairy foe. As the Barracudas approached the fjord where Tirpitz was hiding, a thick smokescreen was deployed, cloaking the battleship from sight. This, combined with the ship's camouflage position among the fjord's cliffs, made precision bombing nearly impossible. Despite the confusing conditions, the Barracuda squadrons dove through the haze, dropping their payloads blindly on where they believed the battleship to be. Bombs rained down around the fjord, and while some hit near the ship, this time the German battleship survived the barrage largely unscathed. One last major attempt by the Barracudas came during Operation Goodwood, a sustained series of strikes between August 22nd and 29th. Over the course of nearly a week, 35 Barracudas were launched in waves to hammer Tirpitz once more, this time in a much more coordinated approach at different angles. The Barracudas came in low, diving toward the fjord with their bomb bays loaded, once again targeting the battleship's vulnerable areas. However, even after the intense bombardment of Operation Goodwood, the German battleship remained afloat. Despite their best efforts, it would take the might of Avro Lancaster bombers, carrying tallboy bombs, to finally sink the German vessel later that year. Despite its performance against the most important Kriegsmarine ship, the model had a lot of faults. The Fairy Barracuda had a reputation for being mechanically unreliable, suffering from a fairly high rate of unexplained fatal crashes, often involving experienced pilots. Veteran test pilot Baker Faulkner was brought in to address the issues and boost morale amongst operational squadrons. An analysis revealed the cause was traced to small leaks developing in its complex hydraulic system. Pilots also criticized the aircraft for its sluggish maneuverability and high stall speed, making it difficult to handle in tight turns and carrier operations. Poor visibility from the cockpit, especially during dives, only added to the aircraft's infamy. Nonetheless, in the spring of 1944, the Fairy Barracuda entered the Pacific Theater as part of the British Pacific Fleet, beginning with Operation Cockpit, air raids against Japanese forces on Sabang in Sumatra. One of the most useful developments to emerge from the Pacific operations was the Barracuda Mark III, which entered service with a crucial addition: air-to-surface vessel radar for anti-submarine warfare. Equipped with this capability, the Mark III played a pivotal role in hunting enemy submarines and conducting coastal reconnaissance in waters teeming with Japanese naval activity. But not even this technological update was enough to save the model's faltering reputation. The tropical heat in the Pacific caused a dramatic reduction in the already struggling Barracuda's combat effectiveness. Its Merlin 32 engine, optimized for low-altitude operations, struggled to perform in the sweltering conditions, with reports indicating that the aircraft's combat radius was reduced by up to 30%. Compounding the problem, Barracudas tasked with striking targets on the eastern side of Java faced an even greater challenge: the need to fly over Indonesian mountain ranges. The aircraft's single-stage supercharger was insufficient for high-altitude operations, leaving it ill-equipped to handle such missions. As a result, the Royal Navy began replacing its Barracuda squadrons with American-built Grumman Avengers. By the time victory over Japan Day arrived in 1945, the British Pacific Fleet had embarked 5 Avenger squadrons, leaving only 4 Barracuda squadrons on its carriers. Despite its contributions, the Barracuda's time in the Pacific was short-lived. A variant with a more powerful engine, capable of addressing the aircraft's performance issues, was envisioned but never produced. In the aftermath of the conflict, the Barracuda was relegated to secondary roles, mostly serving as a trainer aircraft. The once ambitious torpedo bomber remained in service with the Fleet Air Arm until the mid-1950s, after which it was completely phased out. A sky-high thank you to Wings of Heroes for sponsoring today's video. Remember, you can download Wings of Heroes for free using the link in the description or scanning the QR code. Team up with friends, customize your aircraft, and dominate the skies in thrilling 5v5 battles. Don't forget to use the code Dark Skies for an exclusive starter plane skin. Your place in aviation history awaits.